Your fridge is humming right now. It's 3 a.m. You're hunting for a slice of Kraft single, and that white noise is the rhythmic sound of you being a spoiled suburban god. In 1380, silence. Total, terrifying silence, broken only by the wet thwack of a cleaver against a wooden stump. If you didn't have a literal mountain of gray, jagged salt by the time the first frost hit, you weren't just food insecure, you were a corpse waiting to happen. We call it artisanal curing today. Absolute bullshit. It was chemical warfare against the very concept of rot. It's November 12th in a drafty Essex pantry. Wait, no, the floor is actually packed dirt, my bad. The air smells like copper, pigskin, and the stale Atlantic. It's suffocating, and it's the only thing keeping you alive.
It's St. Martin's Day, Martinmas, if you fancy, and that's the deadline. If the pig is still walking by sunset on November 11th, you're flirting with a very thin, very cold funeral in February. Because you can't feed a pig in the winter, grain is for people. So, the pig dies. Everything dies. And then the real work begins. Look at your hands. Now imagine them raw, cracked, and weeping because you've spent 14 hours elbow deep in a wooden vat of brine. This isn't a pantry. It's a chemical lab where the only reagent is sodium chloride, and the only outcome is survival. You're standing in the larder. Actually, the word comes from lardarium, the place where the pig fat lives. It's cold in here. Not, I should grab a sweater cold, but I can see my breath and my joints feel like rusted hinges cold. The salt doesn't come in those cute little round blue cylinders with the umbrella girl. No, it arrives in heavy, damp hemp sacks, smelling of a shipwreck and costing more than your house. It's gray, it's coarse, it's filled with bits of sand and crushed seashells because it was evaporated in some sun-baked pit in the Bay of Biscay and hauled overland by guys who definitely didn't wash their hands. You take this grit and you rub. You rub until your palms bleed, and then the salt gets into the cuts, and you keep rubbing because if there's a single pocket of moisture left in that ham hock, the bacteria, not that you know what bacteria are, you just call it the devil's breath, will find it. The chemistry is basically a mugging, osmosis. The salt is a bully. It draws the water out of the cells of the meat, making the environment so toxic and dehydrated that no self-respecting microbe could possibly set up shop. You're turning a soft, perishable muscle into a literal rock. And it's everywhere. The floor is gritty. The air tastes like a beach. If you touch your eyes right now, you'll scream. But look at those barrels, stacked, heavy, oak-staved and iron-bound. Inside, the pork is swimming in a pickle, a liquid so salty an egg would float on it like a cork. Or at least it better. If the egg sinks, you didn't use enough salt. If you didn't use enough salt, you'll be eating your own shoes by March. Wait, did I say March? I meant February. March is when the scurvy starts, but we'll get to that. For now, just keep rubbing. The grease is starting to coat the walls. It's 1380, and your life depends on how much pain your nail beds can take. It's November 11th. Martinmas. The air is crisp. The kind of cold that makes your nose hair feel like needles every time you inhale. To you, it's just a date on a calendar, maybe a Tuesday. To the 1380s peasant, it's the day of the great dying. You aren't killing because you're cruel. You're killing because you're a mathematician of survival. Look at the ox. He's been working the fields all summer, heaving through the clay. But the grass is gone. The hayloft is half empty. If you try to keep him alive until April, he'll starve, you'll starve, and the whole system collapses. So you bring out the mallet. One heavy, wet thud. Then the knife. The smell of hot, metallic blood hits the freezing air, and it's thick. It's a steam engine of gore. You aren't just butchering, you're racing against the clock. Animal heat is your enemy. If that meat stays warm for too long, it'll rot from the bone outward before the salt can even say hello. You have to strip the hide, don't nick it, that's your shoes for next year, and get to the muscle. It's messy. Your hands are stained deep crimson, the color of a sunset you're too busy to look at. You're hacking the carcass into flitches, big, ugly, jagged slabs of flesh. No saran wrap, no styrofoam trays, just raw, steaming mountains of protein that need to be mummified immediately. And here's the kicker. The salt isn't even salt as you know it. It's more like gravel. You're taking these hunks of beef and pork and you're burying them. You have these massive wooden troughs, hollowed out logs really, and you layer it. Salt, meat. Salt, meat.
Wait, did I mention the mother liquor? That sounds like a heavy metal band or a bad cocktail. But in 1380, it's the stuff of nightmares. As the salt draws the moisture out of the beef, it creates this viscous, grayish, bloody syrup at the bottom of the barrel. You don't throw it out, you let the meat soak in it. It's a brine so concentrated it would probably melt a modern stomach lining. You see a film forming on top? That's okay. Just scrape the mold off. If it's green, you're fine. If it's black, well, hope you like the taste of a slow, agonizing death by botulism. Actually, before we get deeper into the gore and the chemistry of the barrel, do me a favor. If you're enjoying this dive into the damp, salty misery of the 14th century, hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel, and honestly, it's a lot less painful than scrubbing pig fat off a stone floor in midwinter. Go ahead, I'll wait. I'm just staring at this ox liver. Okay, we're back. The physics of this is brutal. Imagine the meat cells as tiny water balloons. The salt surrounds them and starts screaming, "Give me the water!" It's a process called osmosis, but you don't call it that. You call it not dying in February. The water leaves the cells, the salt moves in, and suddenly the meat isn't meat anymore. It's a chemical compound. It's a brick. You can't just throw a ham in a box and walk away. You have to manage the brine. Every few days, you're in the larder turning the meat. Your fingers are perpetually pruned. The salt has found every tiny hangnail and paper cut and turned them into screaming beacons of white-hot pain. You're literally pickling your own hands while you try to save the bacon. And the bacon? It's the prize. Pork is the king of the larder because it's fatty. Beef gets tough when you salt it. It turns into something like the sole of a boot, what sailors would eventually call salt junk. But pork, the fat doesn't absorb the salt the same way. It stays supple. It stays rich. There's this one specific cut, the green ham. It's not actually green, hopefully. It's just unaged. You rub it with a mix of salt and maybe some saltpeter if you can afford the sketchy stuff from the apothecary. The saltpeter, potassium nitrate, is what keeps the meat pink. Without it, the meat turns a depressing, muddy gray. It looks like a wet wool sweater. It tastes like, well, it tastes like the ocean and iron. By the way, have you ever thought about the sound of a medieval larder? It's not quiet. It's the sound of dripping. Drip, drip, drip. The barrels are weeping. The moisture from the carcasses is escaping, hitting the floor, mixing with the dirt and the stray salt grains. It smells like a locker room at the bottom of the Atlantic. And let's talk about the brawn. You don't waste anything. The head of the pig? That goes into a pot. You boil it until the meat falls off the skull. You chop it up, put it in a mold, and let the natural gelatin, the collagen from the skin and ears, set it into a wobbling, translucent brick of face meat. You eat that first, because even with all that salt, the fancy bits go bad before the hard-muscled hams. You're constantly checking the seals on the barrels. If the wood shrinks because the air is too dry, the brine leaks out. If the brine leaks out, air gets in. Air is the enemy. Air brings the invisible rot. You have to keep those oak staves tight. You might even pour a layer of rendered lard over the top of the barrel to create an airtight plug. A fat seal. It's ingenious. It's disgusting. It's 1380. I forgot the fish. Oh God, the fish. If you're near the coast, or even if you're not, you have barrels of herring. These aren't the nice little fillets you get at a brunch buffet. These are whole fish, packed so tightly they've become a single, solid mass of scales and salt. When you open a barrel of white herring, the smell is enough to peel paint, if paint had been invented yet. You have to soak them for 24 hours just to make them edible. If you don't soak them, your tongue will shrivel up like a slug on a sidewalk. Everything in this room is a weapon. The salt burns, the cold bites. The meat is as hard as a stone. But you look at the rafters. You see the flitches of bacon hanging there, now moved out of the brine and into the chimney stage. You're smoking them, not for flavor, that's a modern luxury, but because smoke is another layer of armor. The creosote and phenols in the wood smoke kill the microbes on the surface. You use oak or beech, never pine, unless you want your breakfast to taste like a turpentine factory. You're standing there, shivering, looking at 2 tons of salted death. This is your bank account. This is your insurance policy. If a thief breaks in, he isn't looking for gold. He's looking for that ham. Wait, did I hear something? Probably just the house settling. Or a rat. Rats love the larder, but they usually break their teeth on the salted beef. It's a weird, silent war. You versus the invisible world of decay. You've used chemistry you don't understand to stop time. You've frozen a moment of slaughter and stretched it out over 6 months. But here's the problem. You can't live on salt alone. And as the weeks go by, and you keep carving slices off those stony slabs of beef, you're going to notice something. Your gums are getting a little soft. Your old scars are starting to ache. But that's for later. For now, the barrels are full. The larder is a fortress. And you're just a guy with very, very salty hands. February 12th, or maybe the 14th. The calendar is a lie when the sun only shows up for 4 hours of gray, insulting light. The silence in the larder has changed. It's not the silence of a library anymore. It's the silence of a countdown. I touched my shin this morning, just a small bump against the stool. A bruise bloomed instantly, dark purple, like a crushed plum. It won't go away. And my gums? They're bleeding when I chew the hardtack. My old scar, the one from the scythe back in '76, is itching. No, it's opening. The body is literally forgetting how to hold itself together. We call it the sickness of the salt, but it's really just the absence of life. We've killed the bacteria, sure, but we've killed the food too. We're eating ghosts. Then I heard it. Drip. A sound that shouldn't exist in a frozen world. Drip. Drip. I looked up. The thatch. A leak. Just a tiny rhythmic betrayal of soot-blackened meltwater. It's been tunneling. Quietly. Secretly. It's gone straight into the Great Barrel. The primary beef reserve. My insurance policy. The brine is diluted. The delicate chemical balance, the saturation point that keeps the rot at bay, is shattered. I plunged my arm in, past the surface. The water wasn't cold. It felt lukewarm, slimy. I pulled up a slab of flank. It didn't look like meat. It looked like a wet gray rag. And the smell? It hit me like a physical blow. Not the clean, sharp sting of salt. It was sweet, cloying. The smell of a battlefield 3 days after the drums stop. "No," I whispered. My voice sounded thin, like dry parchment. "No, no, no." I grabbed the knife. I started hacking at the slime, trying to find the heart of the meat, something still salvageable. But the rot is a cancer. It's fast, faster than my shaking hands. I'm covered in gray sludge. It's under my fingernails. The realization hits like a fever. The fortress has been breached. The salt failed. Or rather, the world found a way back in. I looked at the other barrels. Are they turning too? I'm hyperventilating now. Every shadow in the corner looks like a patch of mold. Every draft feels like a death sentence. We're only in February. The hunger gap doesn't even start until April. I'm standing in a room full of food, and I've never been more certain that I'm going to starve. My hands are stained gray. I want to scream, but the air in here is too heavy with the scent of failing chemistry. Wait, was that the door? Or just the ice groaning under the weight of more snow? It doesn't matter. The war is over. The salt lost. February 14th. My hands are still slick with that gray, sweet rot. It's a catalyst. This specific flavor of terror, the realization that the barrel is failing, is why we eventually flee. Why we shove wooden holes into the Atlantic's throat. Not for glory, for spices, for better salt, for a way to survive the winter without tasting the sickness. They'll call it the age of discovery. I call it a frantic global scramble to find a refrigerator that doesn't exist yet. History isn't built on maps. It's built on a rumbling stomach. If you're still here, hit the button. Subscribe. I need a better barrel. Seriously,